would say there's two clear signs that would indicate when a conflict is about to become a negative conflict for the team or for the business. The first sign that a conflict is going to become a negative force in your team is if the emotions are starting to escalate. If people are getting angry, if they're getting upset, this is a sign that the conflict is going to become personal, is going to become distracting from task performance. The second sign that a conflict is going to be destructive for a team is if people are fighting about things that they actually don't really care about or shouldn't be that important. So if you're fighting about something very silly, about what time to meet or who's going to do what, often these types of conflicts are venues for people to fight about bigger issues, be it status concerns, leadership issues, questions of respect. And so if you're fighting about something that it doesn't make sense why this is such a big issue, it often means that your team is in trouble and this is a destructive conflict and they need to take a step back and figure out what the real issues are and go from there. Conflicts generally start with one person who's listening to a group discussion and thinks, gee, I really don't agree with what's being said here. I should say something. So the person expresses conflict, and the other people on the team have the choice to reflect on that and to offer feedback, to agree or disagree. Generally, one person will offer feedback to what the person said. So you think we should take strategy X? Well, actually, I think we should take strategy Y. At this point, you have an interpersonal conflict between two people in the team. The other 5 team members could be sitting there watching and deciding whether or not they should choose to engage or not. Conflicts at this stage generally are the most positive for team performance because the two people engaging are engaging because of authentic interest in the issue and differences in opinion or information that need to be reconciled. However, as a conflict starts to escalate and to grow and to involve more members may not always join for reasons due to the question being fought about. They could join because they get emotional, the people are starting to yell or to get angry and they also get emotional. Could also be that they're helping political alliances, that their boss or their friend or someone they're close to is involved in the conflict and they feel the need to join in to support them. This is the second phase of conflict and where subgroups start to form. And when there's subgroups involved in a conflict, again, it intensifies, it escalates, and it's more likely to become personal and destructive than that initial conflict between the two people who had just different pieces of information. And as these subgroups start to fight with one another, over time, any remaining members that weren't involved in the conflict have no choice. They're going to be sucked in as well. And then you have a true team brawl, which is not going to be a good thing for team performance. If a manager detects a conflict in the team, the first thing that the manager should do is to identify what's being discussed and who's involved and why. So if he sees 2 members or she sees 2 members discussing an issue that's very related to the task and the members seem to be engaging in this debate because they want to make the team better, as a manager, this is a conflict that you should allow to go out. Just let it play out and to see where they come to in this conflict. However, if the manager notes that the conflict is personal or emotional or it's about issues that are not so important, such as about the process, this is a conflict that you should cut off and try to resolve offline. Talk to the members individually, try to get them on the same page again. So that would be the first step, is to understand what they're fighting about, what their motivations are, and then to deal with that. So task conflicts, again, are the most productive form of conflict in teams. And there's 3 other forms of conflict that can occur in teams and are generally likely to hurt team performance. These 3 destructive types of conflict in teams are process conflicts, relationship conflicts, and status conflicts. Process conflicts are conflicts about the logistics of day-to-day work in teams, of what time we're going to meet, who's going to do what responsibilities each person should have. These conflicts, interestingly, have been shown to be the most negative form of conflict that can occur in teams. The reason being is that these conflicts often represent underlying issues in the team. That if you're going to fight about roles and responsibilities, it's often because you care about your status or your prestige in the team, but you're unwilling to say that. So then you choose indirectly to choose the best responsibility for yourself to gain prestige over your teammates. This makes these types of conflicts particularly dangerous. Relationship conflicts are another negative form of conflict in teams. Relationship conflicts are about personality clashes, differences in political beliefs, people who just don't get along. These conflicts have always been shown to be negative for team performance and are best avoided if you can. The last type of conflict that's been more recently pointed out in the literature is status conflicts, or conflicts about the relative respect that people have for one another within the team, about the hierarchy, about the rank order. These types of conflicts are especially prevalent in higher level teams in the organizations, or teams where people really care about status and power, so management teams, boards of directors, etc. These conflicts are particularly difficult to work with and often negative for performance because people often don't voice them directly. It's indirect behaviors. It's engaging in process conflicts to claim a choice responsibility to improve your status. It's engaging in relationship conflicts to derogate somebody to, again, improve your own position. And because these status conflicts are so insidious, they're very difficult to catch and very difficult to resolve. And so if there's any way to get the team on the same page to avoid status issues in the first place, a manager would be well advised to do that. One of the solutions in the literature that's been looked at then is how do you help virtual teams, given that virtual teams have more issues with conflict than face-to-face teams? And one main solution is to make sure that you have a face-to-face kickoff when you start working together with a virtual team. This is really critical to give team members a few days together to get to know one another so they have a context and an understanding of the relationship and of the person. In case they do have a conflict over email or over the phone, they know how to make sense of it and to make the right attributions rather than taking things personally. If conflict isn't managed and isn't dealt with, and it transforms into a negative form of conflict, be it process conflict, relationship conflict, status conflict, it can tear a team to pieces. There's been research that shows the conflict leads to psychosomatic complaints. People get burnout, they get depressed, they leave the company, and the teams eventually can dissolve. So the dangers of not resolving conflict are huge. It's something that managers really do need to take seriously in the daily life of their teams, is to monitor their conflicts and prevent them from getting to that point. My top 3 tips for managing conflict in an organization include knowing what people are fighting about, why they're fighting, and what are their emotions while they're fighting. So to discuss each of these 3 points in a little bit more detail, first, understand what they're fighting about. What's the topic of the conflict? Is it about the goals of the team, or is it about something that's not likely to help your team so much, such as questions of logistics, interpersonal tensions, status concerns, etc.? So recognize what the topic of the conflict is and make choices accordingly. Secondly, understand the motivations of why people are engaging in conflict. Is what they're fighting about the real issue? Are there issues under the surface that people are trying to indirectly raise in another manner, such as, are they engaging in a process conflict about what time to meet as a way to further their own status position in the team? And to have strategies ready to resolve these underlying issues. So recognize why they're engaging and make sure you deal with the conflict at that level rather than necessarily at the surface level. Finally, to look at the emotions and to monitor the emotions carefully during conflicts. And the minute that members start to become emotional, to be upset, to raise their voices, this conflict is no longer going to be good for performance, and the team needs to take a break. You need to step in and resolve it one-on-one with members individually or find a way out of the situation before it escalates out of control.